We're here on October the 25th, 2013, and my name is John Green. I'm a 1979 graduate of the UT Medical School at Houston, here visiting with Betty Murphy. Betty was the mother for all the students in the early formative years of our medical school, and I wanted to have a record of her wit and wisdom. So we have some questions that we're going to ask her today.
How's everybody in the photography section of school?
Well, I kind of hoped that somebody would come help me and put a professional spin on this, but it didn't happen.
With 5 grandkids or more, you are a professional.
Tell me about the first day you were at the medical school.
Well, you mean before I knew what I was?
Yes.
I was with Dr. Tuttle's wife. We were working on a project together for the whole of Texas. And in the process, she said, "How would you like to work at the medical school?" I said, "There isn't a medical school. There is nothing but blank outside." She said, "My husband is the head of it." I said, "Where is he?" She said, "In the library." So then I said, "Why are you looking for somebody?" And she said, "Well, we just fired the other one." But anyhow, she said, "I want you to go to the library and meet my husband." I said, "Okay." So I went to the library, and he said, "Oh, yeah, you're the one. Well, my wife will take you across the street and show you where your office is." I hadn't even said I was going to do anything. I go across the street to that large building behind the panes of glass. So I went over and met the 2 people in the office, and there on the floor were all of the record that the previous man had just left on the floor. So I recognized that was my place to work for a while, on the floor, till I could get it organized. So I did that. One, I decided I was going to find more about what I was supposed to do from other people than I was going to find out from the people at the medical school, because nobody knew what was happening in my section. So I began to go from school to school. I got the most help from the woman that worked with Dr. Matney, and she was wonderful. She said, "These are the records I keep. This is how I help find money. This is how I help find places to live." And I thought, this is a real person doing real things. I think I can do that. So I did that. That's how it got started.
One of the things that almost all the students that ever went there while you were there being our mother, the amazing thing was on the first day of class, you knew everybody's name, you knew their spouse's name, you knew their children's names. How did you do that?
I sat up in bed at night with folders and repeated them over and over. And my son Michael was going to A&M, and he came in and fussed that I was forever memorizing people's names basically in a foreign country as far as he was concerned, because he couldn't ask me questions because I said, "I'm doing this." I went through all of the applications that had been accepted. That's how I did it. It's called work. We had to get, well, let's see, we had to get the school organized and the cadavers brought from another building. This was done with students driving the cadaver one at a time from the old building to the new building, which was the building on the corner, the big building that had been all kinds of offices. and we had to move the cadavers and...
You're talking about the Prudential Building?
Huh?
The Prudential
The
Building.
Prudential Building.
Yes.
They were moved down to the Were you there?
No.
Okay, you missed that because there were people wondering about those odd people in the cars going down the freeway. So, anyhow...
What a way to get in the HOV lane.
Isn't that? Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Anyhow, the flood changed us tremendously.
Was this the first, second, or third flood?
The first flood in 75,
Mm-hmm.
1975. It was horrible. It infiltrated the office just as we had everything ready to move to the other building. It was all on the floor. We had to get it up. The plus thing about that was that we, unknown to Dr. Ribble, who was the first dean?
Tuttle.
Dr. Tuttle hadn't had time to decide whether or not we should have a piano. So we decided it for him when he was out of town. We had the piano moved across to the new building, the first floor, and it was there when he returned. And by then, the students were used to playing the piano in the daytime at certain times. And we had the piano, when it was in our office in 75, when it flooded, we put candles on it. And people came in from the street thinking it was a bar, which it wasn't. We were getting ready to move across the street, which we couldn't do because it had flooded.
Now, why did you put candles on it?
Yeah.
Because it was dark?
Yes. Yes, we put candles on it. We did everything wonderful. And the lab across the driveway of the parking garage had been looking for an axolotl that had disappeared. I never heard of an axolotl. I didn't know what the thing looked like, but we discovered it when we moved the furniture. Oops, I'm sorry. We discovered it when we moved the furniture across the street. It had died under one of our cabinets. But we did not exactly state the fact that we had found it because it was squashed flat and it was an important piece of their study. I gave it to a dependable person, that means one who would keep her mouth shut, Billy White, and said, we gave it a proper burial, is what I told her. I don't know how you put that in the record about what happened with the axolotl, but that's what happened. So that's what happened.
Which dean did you enjoy? How many deans did you work for?
Well, Dr. Tuttle, who was not there too frequently. He was across the street. And the good part about that was he had a wonderful wife that I enjoyed working with. And the other good thing about it was Dr. Tuttle was so busy he didn't really know when things happened. Like the piano when it came, like the fact that I finally gave up going to meetings out of state because I could order tape recordings of the meetings and not have to go. And most of them were interesting because I would see people later and they would say they'd met me at that meeting. I said, wasn't it wonderful? And I'd heard it all on tape and it was perfectly boring and had nothing new in it. It simply told you how to do your records that I was already doing.
So what's your best memory from the medical school?
Oh, all of them. Really. They all had something to offer. Now and then I think of things and burst out laughing. I can't help it. Well, yes, the guy that delivered mail, he wanted to see a girlfriend. And I noticed every day he would come through the driveway and the parking with his mail to deliver, and that it would show up in the girls' restroom. So I took it. I figured he was going up to see the girl on the elevator without the mail that was supposed to be delivered. So after about a week of that, I went and picked it all up and hid it in my office. And pretty soon he arrived frantic. He'd lost the mail. I said, "Oh, that's sad. Where did you leave it?" Well, he wouldn't say where he left it. I said, "If you can't remember where you left it, how are you going to find it?" So pretty soon he was ready to kill me. I said, "Do you think it could be in the girls' restroom?" And he said, no. I said, "Go and look." And he saw there was nothing still there, and he came back, and all but got sick. And I said, "How about this?" Yes, it was. He stayed away from the girls' restroom after that. So, I mean, it was all kinds of motives coming out at odd times.
But you stood above that.
Are you kidding? I didn't know what was happening half the time. I would come upon it, you know, just accidentally.
And sometimes they ask you to do things that you didn't want to do.
Yes, and I refused those that I shouldn't do. And I didn't make friends and influence people, but there were physicians who asked for special care for certain students, especially in the hardcore.
Oh, gross anatomy.
Yes, gross anatomy. A woman had taken gross anatomy, they claimed, except one, she hadn't paid, two, she hadn't registered, and three, I forgot what the third thing was. She hadn't done any of that. She didn't have a microscope, she hadn't done this, she hadn't done that, and she would not get a grade. And the faculty, some of the faculty tried very hard with Baylor to manage it, because the woman was in Baylor. She didn't get a grade from me. She may have gotten it from some little person passing by a year later, but it's too bad. That just turned my stomach, you know? I just thought, this is cruddy. And I wouldn't do it. And just as a favor, I said, it's not a favor. I'm not doing it. So
There's some things you can't ask as a favor.
no, that a woman who didn't go to class, didn't have a microscope, or pay for one, and hadn't had her picture taken or anything. She just appeared on a list.
People sent me questions to ask you.
Okay, good.
What qualities define a great medical student and future physician based on your experience at the medical school?
I have absolutely no idea. Some of those that turned out to be extremely fantastic, you would have sworn they couldn't do a darn thing. So there you are, that's no help, is it? Well, I'm not the one that voted on those things. See, I didn't
And I
vote
think
on
you enjoyed that you didn't have to vote on them.
I did find it a joy that I didn't have to vote on them, because there were too many of them that could do it.
Because we could always come to you outside the system
Yes.
and cry on your shoulder,
Yes.
and you couldn't go to your professors
Yeah.
and cry on their shoulder, or to the
Yeah.
instructors or to the dean or whatever, but we
Yeah.
could always come to you.
Yes, and I loved that. It made the life interesting. To be a student and came in a what do you call it when you bring your in the trailer, and told me he was a medical student from another state, and I knew he wasn't, and he showed up and tried to register. And then I found out his parents were coming and did not know he had not entered medical school. They were going to find it out. So I asked one of the medical students to house him until the embarrassment went over. I don't
Well, who was your favorite other dean that you worked for?
Dr. Tuttle was the favorite one, as far as I was concerned, mainly because he was so busy, his wife would talk to him, then his wife would tell me. And that was important because we ironed out things that were going to be hysterically bad. You know, like once I had to take up, what is it you pay before you go to a school? Money.
Tuition?
Yeah, I'd have to pick up tuition from new students on the sidewalk because nobody could find our office and they weren't paying. So I had to sit on the sidewalk with a table, and the girl that was sent to work with me from the big office kept asking me questions, and I said, wait a minute, what is it you know? Let's start there, you know. She knew nothing. I said, okay, here's what you do. When somebody comes up, you get their name. We were sitting together on the sidewalk. I felt like we were selling the school to people that might not be able to pay. Anyhow, we had to take it up. And she said, I have to be appointed. And I said, by whom? She said, somebody in charge. I said, I am in charge. I appoint you. She said, okay. I didn't know it was so easy to be in charge of anything. Then the central office would not send us help when our offices got built. They kept putting us off. So finally one Friday I went outside to the not to the flagpole, to the light outside, and everybody was lined up for the transportation. I went out and said, how many of you have children or relatives that need a job? Hands went up. How many of you have kids, older kids that could serve as a receptionist? Hands went up. So I took names and I sent them down the next day to be interviewed, and we found people to help. They hadn't tried anything. And I thought, try the light post is all I could think of. The most interesting thing that happened, though, off schedule, was the day there was a special celebration going on in Houston, and off the street came a black man with a tag on him. He was sick. He had left the hospital for poor. What's that?
Bentop.
He'd left Bentop. He had his tags all over him. He came in and he wanted the gold telephone. This is what he said. I want the gold telephone to call the mayor. And I was sitting at the back place on the floor putting things together when the secretary at the front, who was expecting a baby and every day demanded quiet and peace for 2 hours, she was confronted with him. And he wanted her telephone. He wanted to call that man because he was being harassed. So I came out. I asked him his name. He had it all over him, tags and stuff. And then I went across the driveway to the office with an axolotl in it, the prized thing that eventually got eradicated, and went in and asked them if somebody named Billy White, who was a wonderful person to work in a lab, I said, would you like to go with me over to Bentop and take this gentleman in my office with me? You'll sit in the back seat and he'll sit in the front seat, and I'll go get the car. And she said, that would be fine. And she waited in the office with this man. We got him in the back seat. We got him in the front seat with me, her in the back seat. We go to Bentop. I don't know what to do next because he obviously came from a special department, escaped from that. So I saw a guy that wearing a tag. I knew nobody over there, but I said, that's the man who will take him in. And Billy White said, how do you know? And I said, because I'm going to tell him this is your student. So I got his name up here, and then I got out of the car and took the guy with me, and I introduced them to each other, and I got back in the car and left. the two together. We got him out of our office. So that was a very high point for both of us.
What's your favorite memory from the medical school?
The flood, it terribly affected everything. The wealthier people parked underground and got washed away. Yeah, it was terrible. It destroyed so many things that were important. Records and
And
stuff.
that wasn't even the big flood.
Huh?
The big flood came years after that when the new medical school building filled full of water.
Oh, Lord, it did.
Because they realized they built it in a bowl with the streets built up, and they built a bowl around the medical school, and the lake filled up
Oh, yes.
underneath, and they lost all the animals, all the
Oh, and
research animals.
I used to make the puppies from the dogs that were being used for, things. I used to go on Saturday and go down and visit, it was in the basement, visit the little animals, and I made little kind of sweaters for them, but I didn't knit. And it had UT on it, on the back, so that the puppies could be given to somebody with a UT on it. So, anyhow, that was my extracurricular activity. Dr. Gunn came. He was a refreshing change.
He was dean, wasn't he?
Yes, and you never knew what he was going to do. You could never tell what he was going to do or how he was going to introduce anything. I'd be sitting in an audience with applicants, taking every word of his in. He said, now all of you want a school that is old and well practiced and very important. That one's in Greece, is what he would say. That one's in Greece. We're not that one. And there'd be kids taking notes about Greece, and then all of a sudden it was like, no, that's wrong. But he had a flair for life. That every afternoon at 5 he would rise out of his chair and said, okay, now I have research to do. That meant I am going home. It took me a while to catch on.
How did your husband feel about you working at the medical school?
He loved it because he went to medical school for a very short time. I met him when he was in seminary, and he had been interested, he'd been vitally interested in medicine, and they took him at SMU in medicine.
So he's in the seminary first and then medical school.
No,
Oh, I'm sorry.
he did the medical school short time because he fell in their pool for, what do you call it? When you throw bodies in to get, like,
Cadavers?
huh? Make cadavers out. He fell in that. It was brand new.
Literally?
It was brand new in Dallas, yes. Well, he had injured legs from the hip down. He'd been hit by a truck when he got off of a school bus. And from the knee down, he looked okay, but he was destroyed from there. Anyhow, and he told me all these things before we got married, and I said, uh-huh. Then, unfortunately, I met all these people that these things happened to, and they'd be telling me on the street, city street, and I'd just be bursting out laughing, which was not the intended reaction. They said, we didn't take him because as smart as he was, he fell into the whatever you put bodies in to cremate, to whatever. And in the fire department, see, his parents were dead. He went with him, let's see. His mother died in Virginia. Then his father was from Pennsylvania. His father was a doctor from Pennsylvania who went to the Southern Belle area because he wanted to marry a rich woman. He found one that had lots of land. He married her. He had 2 children. He had 2 others besides. The wife died. When the wife died, my husband was 3. He went out and set the graveyard on fire where his mother was buried because he wanted to keep her warm. Where he got the matches, nobody knew. All these stories, unfortunately, were certified when he was bishop and had to go to Pennsylvania for something. He took me with him. He said, "I'm going to look up my old family." I said, "You don't remember your old family. You were only 5 when you left there." He said, "I remember them real well. They just don't remember me." And so he looked up, he said he was going to look them up. And so I went to a motel and took a book and read in the bedroom while he went and looked for family in a library, and he found them in books. He came back, he'd called them, he said, "We're going out to their house for wine." I said, "Whose house?" "Uncle so-and-so." I said, "Oh, okay." So we went. Then we come back to Houston, and he decides to go to Virginia and find all those relatives he hadn't seen. So he goes to they have a library here with wonderful stuff to look up your relatives. He went and looked them up while I was looking up mine that were in another part of the South. And he came back with his uncle's picture and information. He said, "I'm calling him tonight." I said, "He isn't going to remember you. You were just a little kid." "Yes, they'll remember me." When he called, the guy said, "Are you the one that set the graveyard on fire?" And then I knew he was remembered. Yes, so that's what happened.
Tell me about your last day as a registrar at the medical school.
The last day as a registrar came about because they changed the way that the school was divided, and they moved all of the records down to a very major person who did all of the work for all of the students of all of the schools.
Is there anything else you'd like future students and at the medical school to know about you or the school?
I liked it. I liked the school. I really did. I liked
I don't think some of the students like it.
No, they couldn't. They couldn't, you know, it's frightening kind of. And they never know if anybody's listening to them, you know. They don't know if anybody knows they exist. Lots of times. I don't know how big the classes are now.
230.
That's too many, isn't it? Do they still have smaller labs?
They break off in study groups, I think. I don't know. I didn't go back.
Oh. Well, that's really weird. There were some faculty that I just hated to see come in the door, whose names I shan't mention. But one would come every Saturday.
You're too much of a lady.
Huh?
You're too much of a lady to mention those names.
What?
You're too much of a lady to mention those names.
I couldn't. Well, I just couldn't because they just turned me off something fierce. They would come in on Saturday when I worked and ask all kinds of personal questions about faculty and their grades and students. And I just said, "I really don't know. You know, you're asking the wrong person." But it just turned my stomach that they would do that because they didn't like the professor that was affecting the student, because they wanted that student to come to them. I never expected that. I just, all the way till their graduation, which was, they had no interest in them as people, but they wanted to know things about them they had no business knowing. I didn't think they did, so they didn't find it out from me. They had to find it out from somebody else. Anyhow, I really loved it.
Well, anything else you want to say?
No, I
ages?
just love my work, and I really enjoyed it. I hated to leave it in a way, and yet in another way I was very ready to leave it. I had grandkids and things like that that took precedence.
So you didn't need the students to be kids too anymore.
Huh?
You didn't need the students to be kids anymore. You had your own.
Yes, that's right.
As I was leaving the interview, Miss Murphy tried to give me a scrapbook. I opened it, and it was filled with letters and cards given her when she retired. I said I couldn't accept it, but as all of you know, you can't change her mind once she's made it up. One of the recurring themes in several of the letters was the comment that they were in financial distress and Ms. Murphy bailed them out. I later asked her about it, and she said she could always find loans or scholarships for students, and that some churches near the medical school had special funds for this purpose. I contacted several of these students to confirm this. I never could find out if any of this money came from her pocket. The book is now in the Alumni Association office, where anyone can look at it and learn more about Ms. Murphy and her effect on everyone she met.